2016's Yakuza Kiwami is a remake of the 2005 Yakuza, or Like a Dragon, or Ryuka Gotoku, whatever you want to call it. As a remake that came out around 11 years later, there's bound to be changes in a lot of areas, except for the cutscenes, which they just copied and pasted from the PS2 game data.
I bet you're from the Shimano family. We don't need to be taken care of by some gangsters.
Even with all these changes, I believe that there is one change that stands out the most. This change is that Yakuza Kiwami is a lot more tedious than the original. Kiwami 1 is a tedious game, and through that tedium, it becomes difficult. It's the same kind of tedium you have when you're playing a Souls game and dying to an enemy. Then you have to run past 30 other enemies, go around a door that's locked from the other side, climb a ladder really slowly, run past some more enemies just to get back to the guy that killed you, just so you can die again. Or in GTA Online, where you have to go across the map to get something, then you have to go all the way back and again and again and again. The difficulty doesn't come from the fact that there's smart AI or something breaks your brain when you're trying to figure it out. The difficulty came from the fact that these things were designed to pad out the time that you're spending on the game and to frustrate you. Kiwami 1 is one of the only games in the entire series that is designed like this. You might not think that it's intentional, but it definitely is. Some things in the game have more of this tedium, but the whole design philosophy is still there across the entire game. As a remake that came out after a prequel, there are bound to be some retcons to address the new canon and maybe some additions to the story to improve on it. Kiwami doesn't have as much as that as I'd like to see, but it still makes some changes in places. One of these changes happens to Yumi's ring. In the original, it's just Yumi's ring. There isn't really anything beyond that. It's just like, oh, she wore this? Kiwami changed this by expanding upon the story of the ring and turning it into something that Kiryu gets for Yumi as a gift. Awesome! It's the idea that sounds great on paper and wasn't executed quite as well. Yumi has the ring at the beginning of Yakuza 1, which means that Kiryu must have bought it for her before the game takes place. This means we could get flashbacks to this event somewhere in the story, or they could just dump all this information on us in the first chapter.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Now, the first chapter in the original game is fairly straightforward. There's a flash forward of Kiryu standing over Dojima, then the money collecting with Shinji, then the fight behind Serena and the introduction of Majima, then Nishiki, Reina, and Yumi. Then you go to the Kazuma family office, then you go to Theater Square, then you go to Dojima. It's a lot of stuff when you break it down like that, but it flows naturally into each other. There's an order to it. Dojima, Shinji, Majima, Serena, Kazuma, Theater Square, Dojima. Kiwami decides that this is the perfect place to put the flashbacks of Kiryu buying Yumi's ring. This blows up all the flow of the story because it was never written with the intention of focusing on the ring, nor was it rewritten for Kiwami. Things go as normal until you get to Serena. Dojima, Shinji, Majima, Serena. Then you get a flashback to the origin of the ring. It falls right into the middle of the first chapter. You get context.
ねえ、それじゃあ指輪なんてどう?
Then you go to
Le Marche.
You buy the ring, get robbed, chase down the guy who robbed you. Then you go to Ibisupan. You leave Ibisupan. You ask Shinji for money. Then you go back to Ibisupan. You leave Ibisupan. You ask Shinji for more money. Then you go back. Then you watch Kiryu give the ring to Yumi. Then you have a flashback inside the current flashback you are watching before flash forwarding back to the previous flashback before returning to the present. It's a very, 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 very long fetch quest that is convoluted and mind-numbing to play for no reason. Do I really have to find him twice? Do I really have to ask Shinji for money twice? If you wanted Kiryu to take a long time to come back, Just make him buy flowers or something, or be embarrassed that he's even giving her a gift. Because all of this happens in chapter 1, there's just this random 30-minute segment thrown into the middle of this pre-existing 30-minute chapter. The order is broken. Dojima, Shinji, Majima, Serena. Flashback, thief, Ibisupan, Shinji, Ibisupan, Shinji. Serena, Kazuma, Theater Square, Dojima. Another thing that has changed because of this tedium is Sarah's funeral. More specifically, getting the staff band at his funeral. In the original game, you go inside the building, the mortician is like, "Aw man, I lost it." Then you go outside, you pick it up, then you progress with the story. In Kiwami, you go inside, you see that the mortician lost it, then you find it outside, then he comes outside and takes it back. Then you go back inside, you watch him quit his job and throw the band away. Then you go back outside, you talk to him. Then you have to go to the trash can that he threw his band in. But he threw it in the trash can on the other side. Why? When Haruka is kidnapped by the color gangs, you have to find them to find the location of Haruka. In the original, you can run straight to the White Edge leader who's in the Champion District, and then you beat him up and you can go to Deborah or Debola. In Kiwami, you can run to his location in the Champion District, but you can't actually fight him. You're forced to go to Children's Park to fight the leader of the Blue Z before you're able to fight the leader of the White Edge. That pads out the time for no reason. You can't go straight there. You have to go to Children's Park, fight the guy, then run all the way to the Champion District, fight the guy, and then run all the way to Deborah, instead of just going to the Champion District and then going to Deborah. When you first meet Haruka, she wants you to feed this dog, Pochitaro. It's a fetch quest, even in the original game. But with how Kiwami handled buying Yumi's ring, you can only imagine how they changed things for this quest. In the original game, you have to run all the way down to the end of Nakimichi Street to Don Quixote to buy dog food. Then you run all the way back, and you're good.
I knew he was hungry. I told you.
In Kiwami, dog food is no longer sold at Don Quixote and is instead sold at the closer Popo. Cool, it's closer. But also in Kiwami, you have to get Pochitaro some water, which is also sold at the same Popo. Not a problem. It's simple, right? Wrong. You're never actually told to buy the water until you get the dog food to Pochitaro. So if you didn't buy the water before, you have to run all the way back to the Popo and then run all the way back to Pochitaro. Then you're told by Haruka that Pochitaro needs a plate to eat and drink off of. The Popo doesn't sell this. It's sold down Nakimichi Street in the Don Quixote. So you have to run all the way to Don Quixote, then run all the way back. That could be 3 separate trips. If you're a no-life nerd like me and you're replaying the game, you've probably already bought the water, so you only need to make 1 trip when you go buy the dog food. But most people have a life, so they're not going to be replaying this game. And on their first playthrough, they're not going to know about these multiple items, which means they've got to make these constant trips back and forth for no reason. It's padded out for the sake of being padded out. Why? Why couldn't you just tell me to buy the dog food and the water and the plate all at the same time? And you're telling me that Popos don't have plates? They have sushi platters and bentos. They have plates and bowls. Another example of padding out time for no reason is when Shinji and Reina are running from the Nishikiyama family. In the original game, you aren't actually forced to follow the path. If you run to abandoned building number 3, you're allowed to go in and progress the game. In Kiwami, you are forced to follow the blood trail, and you can't just go straight to the end. If you don't follow the trail, you cannot progress the game. Why? One of the new features in Kiwami 1 is the Kiwami heat actions. Bosses will heal in the middle of fights, and you have to do a heat action on them, whether it be a normal one or one with the Kiwami heat action that belongs to the fighting style that corresponds to the color of their heat aura. It's designed to pad out the fights because the bosses are healing like crazy, but you can still stop them from healing. It sounds completely fine until you actually play the game. When you start a new game, regardless of what kind of game it is, you always start fresh. You have nothing, so there can be a sense of progression as you learn to play the game. Obviously, this is the case with Kiwami. You start with nothing. You do not have Kiwami heat actions that are needed to stop the bosses from healing, and you do not have any upgrades, so you don't do a lot of damage. This leads into one of the early game boss fights, and one that many people find difficult because of this game's weird design. I won't lie, I struggled a lot with Shimano on my first playthrough. His boss fight sucks balls for a lot of reasons, and one of them is because it's an early game boss fight. You have no upgrades unless you beat Majima for the 100 free levels. You're gonna do a tiny amount of damage to Shimano, and as a first time player, you're probably not gonna know that you need to buy the moves that stops him from healing. You can still stop Shimano without the Kiwami heat actions, but since this is early game, they won't really do a lot of damage. Heat actions are also kind of weird in Kiwami. Sometimes they'll do a lot of damage and other times they won't. All I remember is that in Zero, if you were to spam a heat action on Shakedown, it did less and less damage over time. So I believe this just transferred over to Kiwami because the combat system is just copy and pasted. Anyway, you have no upgrades because this is early game. You just fought through a long battle, and you just fought with Majima, so you probably don't have a lot of healing items. Now you've got to fight Shimano, who you can barely do any damage to. You might not have the heat action to stop his healing, and your heat actions get buffered as you use them. On top of all that, Shimano has Shakedown's moveset from Yakuza 0. It has hyper armor, making it less punishable, meaning you have less opportunities to attack, meaning you're not going to do a lot of damage, meaning the boss fight is going to last a longer time. Where have I seen this before? If you compare this to the boss fight in the original game, it's a really stark difference. The original game's boss fight was designed with mashing square in mind. You could beat the ever-living out of Shimano like it's nothing because the game wasn't trying to challenge you. They knew that it's an early game boss fight. Here in Kiwami, the game wants you to be challenged and also for you to engage in the game mechanics. But since this is early game, you can't. You do not have the ability to engage in the game mechanics because you haven't had time to really get used to them. And because Shimano is just tweaked Shakedown, it doesn't really make it a good challenge. It's just like a boss having a lot of HP. It's not really designed in a smart way. It's just like, look guys, it is hard because he has a lot of health. You have to consider all that and the fact that Shimano also does no damage to you. So it's like two wacky wavy inflatable tube mans just hitting each other. It creates a boss fight that takes really long to beat because it's just horribly designed with this philosophy of tedium in mind. Majima everywhere. It's a cool system on paper and lore-wise. It's having the player find all these different versions of Majima and using his different fighting styles that we just used in Zero, or didn't, to help Kiryu refine himself after 10 years in the joint. It's both men honing their skills in cool ways. Great, but execution-wise, oh hell nah. You have to fight these different versions of Majima to unlock specific upgrades, and sometimes you'll get stuck on trying to get the various upgrades because you'll have trouble spawning the specific Majima that you need. There's 24-hour Cinderella Majima, there's Zombie Majima, there's Thug and Brawler Majima, there's regular Breaker Majima, there's Slugger Majima, there's Mad Dog Majima. It's completely left up to random chance whether or not you'll be able to fight any of these guys for an upgrade. There are specific events where you can fight Majima, but sometimes they don't even trigger until a certain point. It would be better if we knew what these certain points were, but we don't. It's just all left up to inference. I remember a time where I couldn't get a specific Majima to spawn, and I was like, what am I doing wrong, man? And I think I couldn't get him to spawn because I had spawned him in Mesu King, but I never went to fight him. But that could just be bad memory. I don't know, I just gotta infer. Anyway, the point is that the system is very tedious, and unlike the XP system with the other styles, you're forced to grind this out if you want to actually use the dragon style. But some of the upgrades are locked behind RNG, and that is stupid. That sucks. It just drags out the time that you're gonna take to upgrade the style for no reason. One of the things that Kiwami adds on to that they really did not need to add on to is the famous car chase scene. You already have to deal with clunky ass controls and the clunky ass camera and not being able to really do anything about the damage that the car is taking beyond shooting the guy doing the damage. The car chase isn't really the best in the technical area, but then Kiwami is like, what if we made it harder? You combine that with the already bad game mechanics and you make a boring experience into a horrible one. Okay, but seriously, the design of the car chase has actually changed. The original happened on a mostly straight highway. The Snake Flower Triad would chase you, drive next to you, or in front of you. This is not how it's designed in Kiwami. Instead of a mostly straight highway, they just reused the map from Kiryu's racing section in Yakuza 5. It's also a lot faster paced than the original, and you're forced to play to this pace instead of pacing yourself. I say this because it lacks a crazy technological advancement. Camera control. In the original game, you could move the camera 360 degrees. In Kiwami, you can't. All you get is this. So when the jank-ass camera moves away from a guy shooting at you or a rocket headed your way, tough luck, buddy. Speaking of which, the Kiwami enemies have rockets. I'm not sure why. Why didn't you use that when we were attacking your base? But hey, they have it in the car chase. In the second phase of the car chase, you have to shoot at enemies on top of this semi. Seems pretty easy, right? But not in Kiwami, because Kiwami means extreme. In Kiwami, you have to shoot at 3 enemies. 2 guys have SMGs and 1 has an RPG. One of the SMG guys and the RPG guy have a lot of HP. But what truly makes this horrible is that the game still spawns regular enemies. So you have to shoot these guys with a lot of health while also shooting these guys. You're constantly swapping targets and you can take damage and get f***ed over. That's what happened to me twice, so I dropped the controller and picked up my mouse. And of course, why? Is this guy a Terminator? Why is he doing that? And why is this even here? Doesn't he know that Lao needs Haruka alive? What is his plan? The design philosophy behind Yakuza Kiwami turned it into a game that is much more tedious and padded than the original game. While some of the parts of this video might not really seem like they relate to each other, they're part of the same design philosophy. For example, having to make multiple trips to feed Pochitaro. It's got the same kind of thinking behind it as chasing the guy who stole Yumi's ring off of you 3 times. Or the car chase being more difficult because enemies just do more damage for no reason. It's like how Shimano has hyper armor for the artificial difficulty. It's to create this tedium, this artificial difficulty through things being frustrating rather than being challenging. The reason why I say this is the weirdest change in this game is because some of the changes that come with this design philosophy make no sense. I genuinely cannot think of a reason why they would change some of these things other than, whoa, it's a remake, we need it to be different than the original game. They even changed the route that Shinji and Reina take to abandoned building number 3. Who does that? Why do I have to go buy a plate for Pochitaro? And why isn't it sold in the Popo? Why does the car chase have a third phase? Does all this tedium make Kiwami a bad game? I don't think so. It just makes it an extreme version of the first game. Get it? Because Kiwami means extreme. This tedium does make it a game where you have to play hide and seek with the guy who stole your ring 2 times before you're able to beat him up. In a game series where you beat people up, I guess by that definition, it is kind of bad. How did he even pawn off the ring? It's stupid.